Ramona Shelburne, Harry Lyles Jr., Frank Isola, Bob Ryan. What do you do when your stadium breaks and drops fans of the opposing team on their tucket feet below? You change the conversation. Washington football team teasing a date and name change, but have they taken enough time? Also, look at this. Did they scoop themselves? Today's video had a blurred image in the background. Is that the Washington Admirals? Let's go around the horn. Spoiler alert. How are they going to keep it up for a month when links on the internet take you to the Washington Admirals and that image? I don't know. We'll get to that in a second.
It's funny because it's probably not the way you wanted it other than the win. And that's all that really matters. That's kind of been the story of my career. It's not always pretty, but we find a way.
He's not wrong, for a lot of reasons. Last night, a record was set. Roethlisberger, 46 passes for 123 yards, fewest yards for that many attempts ever. Baker Mayfield on the other side had 10 straight incompletions. That was the longest streak in years. He was sacked 9 times and had 5 passes batted down. That was the most combined in those categories in years. But we'll start, of course, with Ben Roethlisberger, Frank. The love from the home fans all night. How will you remember Ben Roethlisberger?
Well, in terms of a made-for-television farewell game, it doesn't reach the level of Peyton Manning and John Elway leaving a Super Bowl champion. It's not Kobe Bryant getting 60, but let's face it, that was pretty special last night because of the connection that he has with that city, which is a football-crazy city. They love that team. Obviously, the coaching staff, what it meant for the players. I thought all in all it was great. And let's remember, too, you go back to when he was drafted. The big debate was Eli Manning, Phillip Rivers, Ben Roethlisberger. When the dust settles, for my money, Ben Roethlisberger, and both of those guys are Hall of Famers, had great careers. Ben Roethlisberger had the better career.
Harry Lyles Jr.
Yeah, I agree with that, Frank. I also think that, while he is one of the great quarterbacks of his generation and somebody that you have to identify with this era of football, I think one other big thing that we have to identify with him is that he is one of the faces, undoubtedly, of the personal conduct policy that Roger Goodell implemented in 2007. And I know that he elicits a lot of different feelings from a lot of different people, and I think a lot of those are valid. So I think when it comes to Ben Roethlisberger, yes, you could talk about he was a great quarterback. He was durable. He was tough. He played through a lot of games that he probably shouldn't have played through. But I think when it comes to him, we also have to remember all the off-the-field stuff as well.
It's important to say the specifics here. That 2 rape accusations against Roethlisberger early in his career. One was settled in a civil court, and one was dropped by Georgia prosecutors who declined to press charges. Ramona?
All of the above. And I think that's the way we talk about players who have these incidents in their past. I mean, Kobe Bryant, when he retired, you can't talk about Kobe Bryant on the court and his entire legacy in full without also mentioning the rape allegations against him in Colorado. Now, and there's an important difference. Kobe Bryant was tried in court, and later the case was dismissed, but it was settled in a civil suit. Ben Roethlisberger is accused twice. One was a civil suit, which was later settled out of court 4 years later. Another, the woman did not want to press charges, and so the case was dismissed. But both of those are part of his legacy, and he did he was given a 6-game personal conduct suspension, which he didn't fight. Back when Roger Goodell, it was one of the first times we'd done that. And so I'll remember him as the quarterback you couldn't tackle. Like, you could always take a hit. People bounced off him. He's a winner. He seemed to always throw the ball from any different angle. But you also have to look at the legacy in total. And he should be given credit because we haven't talked about that in over a decade because it happened before the Me Too era, and there really haven't been any other incidents since.
Bob Ryan, I'll turn to you now on how you think of the 18-year career in one franchise. I mean, that's rare now in sports as well for Roethlisberger. Multiple Super Bowls and how it's ended for him.
He's one of the 3 larger-than-life quarterbacks in the history of that franchise: Bobby Lane, Terry Bradshaw, and him. He's going to the Hall of Fame. There's no question. Now, what I'm going to most remember is this Brobdingnagian figure with all the Lilliputians trying to bring him to earth and being unable to do so. Never seen a quarterback that hard to bring down. And as far as what Ramona was saying, I too wonder about how the women population will look at him. And I know I'm rather close to one who is not in a forgiving mood about those transgressions. That's part of the package.
You bring this up, and there was an incredible piece in Sports Illustrated many years ago, what we think about when we think about Big Ben. And I remember this being written by S.L. Price. And There are many Pittsburgh fans, and including women in this piece, that wear the Roethlisberger jersey proudly. He has had, I think the piece gets to, two distinct parts of his career. And after 2011, no one has come close to coming forward. He's been but the piece calls him a family man. That's in this piece as well. Last word I'll give to Frank Isola.
And let's remember, strictly from a football standpoint, 18 years with one team, he has played in 2 regular season games where his team wasn't in playoff contention. So you think about that organization, which has always been a stable franchise with terrific coaches and have a franchise quarterback. You look at him, yes, only 2 Super Bowls, which in the grand scheme of things compared to Brady isn't much, but never
Listen
lost.
to Isola, only 2 Super Bowls. I mean, I guess you saw Eli Manning all those years as well. Absolute Hall of Famer, Frank Isola. Absolute Hall of Famer, Bob Ryan. Ramona
100%.
Shelburne.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Two Super Bowls.
We'll move on now. Also, last night's game was an image you saw over and over again. It was Baker Mayfield struggling. He was on his back. He was on his belly. He was hitting the line. The Browns, let's remember this. They were a possession away from beating Kansas City in the playoffs last year. So for this season, and a lot of it was COVID-related, and a lot of it was Baker Mayfield from an injury in week 2 to his non-throwing shoulder. Mayfield announcing today he's going to have surgery immediately so he can be back for next year. But I want to ask Bob about the Browns, what this offseason looks like for them, and how they should be viewing Baker Mayfield after a step-back season.
If this were January 4th, 2021, we wouldn't be having this conversation because he was coming off a season with 28 TDs and 26 TDs and 8 picks. They were coming off the playoff that you referred to, and everything looked good. We all know that he's been hurt all year now. We all know the team isn't the team that they were, and I don't see there's any issue here. They have to bring him back.
Frank, you see it that way?
Bob is 100% right. Last year in 2 playoff games, he threw for 467 yards, 4 touchdowns, 1 interception. And by the way, they almost beat Kansas City. There's a lot of factors that go into what happened this season, including him not playing well. That offensive line is in shambles. I'm not going to give up on him just yet.
Harry Lyles Jr.?
I don't think he's as bad as what he showed this year. I think that injury has kind of creeped up and shown that was obviously a big factor. But I do think in totality, you do have to look at Baker Mayfield and you have to ask yourself, can you win a Super Bowl with this player? Now, I don't know that he's answered that yet. I think obviously he's got 1 more year. If you're the Browns, you might want to take that year. If you don't like anybody in this upcoming NFL draft, I think Malik Willis would be a great pick. But you have 1 more year that you can take on him to find out and see if you do think that he is your franchise quarterback. But I do think that you have to give some sort of weight to what we did see this year out of
So
Baker.
you're on the other side here then, Bob and Frank. Ramona, where are you on the Browns' position now with Baker Mayfield?
Look, they already picked up his 5th-year option, so he can be on the team next year. Do they give him the big money extension? I don't know that I would after the totality of his career there so far, but I wouldn't give up on him either because I think you have to give him a lot of credit for playing through injury this year. It's not just the throwing shoulder. He's had a lot of other injuries that he's just played through. And the terse press conferences notwithstanding, that's just his relationship with the media. I think the guy has not gotten a lot of credit for playing hurt all year long, and he probably should have sat out a few games like Kyler Murray.
Last word, Harry Lyles Jr.
I do think with these quarterbacks, we kind of forget that, they're much more talented than what they were years ago coming into the NFL. I think he still has time to figure it out, but I think it's still yet to be seen.
We've been Horn. We'll move on. One more story here, and this is coming up because the NFL expanded to 17 games this season. So, Cooper Kupp, 138 catches, 1,829 yards, 15 touchdowns. Those stats through 16 games would be top 5, maybe top 3 all-time receiving seasons. But because of the 17-game season, he now has an opportunity. He can set the all-time receptions and yards record if he goes for 136 in this last game. But he told ESPN's Lindsey Theory it wouldn't seem right to set a record with an extra game. It would be an asterisk. Ramona, Kupp says it wouldn't seem right. How does it seem to you?
He's right, and I'm glad he said it so we don't have to. I mean, that's such a Cooper Kupp quote. I mean, I could have told you he would say that because everything you think you know about wide receivers, he's the opposite of. I live in LA. He's a star here. People know him mostly because most people picked him on their fantasy team, and they probably won their fantasy championship if they had him on the team. But he's not out there flexing. He's not a diva. The fact that he even owns this is so Cooper Kupp. I love
Harry
it.
Lyles, do you believe an asterisk is in order for any record set this season?
Yeah, I think so. I think also, honestly, what this says is that Cooper Kupp is on Twitter because he wanted to get out in front of this and be like, hey, I know what the deal is. I know I'm not breaking any kind of records, like just without that extra game, right? So I think that he went about this the right way. He got out in front of it. And I think, honestly, this one's just pretty obvious. I think that, when it comes to averages, that's when we could start having a conversation.
Frank Isola?
Yeah, he stole the thunder of columnists in San Francisco, Detroit, who all wanted to write this. I give him a lot of credit because, as Bob knows, it drives us crazy when you hear Bernie Williams, Manny Ramirez have the most hits, most home runs in postseason history. Well, they're playing more games. That's the reason why. I mean, so you have to be fair about it. I give Cooper
But has
a lot
any
of credit,
part of
a lot of class.
sports history, the asterisk was not a good thing, right? Putting an asterisk on Roger Maris was not a good thing, Bob.
Well, it was never done that way.
Right,
either,
but the idea of
that
it.
was the discussion. Look, this has been an issue in this league ever since they went from 12 games to 14. And when it was a 1,000-yard rusher in a 12-game season, it really meant something. And then people continued to lionize 1,000-yard rushers when they're going it in 16 games instead of 12. So of course he's right. Congratulations. Thank you, Cooper.
All right. I mean, it went 12 games, then it went 14 games, then it went 16 games, now it's 17 games.
Don't forget T.J. Watt.
Mona Shelburne, last word. That's right, Frank.
Just think how many more touchdowns he'd had if Matt Stafford didn't throw 4 pick sixes to the end.
Yo, there it is.
come
The
on.
panelists in L.A. bringing some fire, Matthew
Going
Stafford.
to the playoffs.
Sorry,
Frank,
Matt,
you
sorry.
brought T.J. Watt, who you saw eat Baker Mayfield last night. He has a shot at the sack record,
Right.
but he missed 2 games, Frank, so he's actually at a 15-game level. If he gets 1.5
go.
sacks next week, he'll break Michael Strahan. And for our younger viewers, I want to show you how Michael Strahan got his record-setting sack 20 years ago.
you.
All right?
Thank you.
That's the best.
Oh, man. We'll be back.
They ran out on the
just fell
field.
down.
and stuff.
With by
Give me a
herself.
break. Oh, Michael Strahan.
Best
That's not-
video.
Grizzlies 118, Nets 104. This dunk. And that win over Brooklyn has Desmond Bane calling Ja Morant the best point guard in the league. But that's his teammate. Bob Ryan, is Morant above Curry, Doncic, Lillard, Paul, Trae Young, whoever else you want to throw out there, the best point guard in the league to you?
Curry is not in this discussion. He's a shooting guard who can pass. That is not a point guard, never was, never will be. Now, as far as John Morant's concerned, we actually have seen him before. It was called Allen Iverson, a 6'1" shooting guard who can pass. He's not really a pure point. There's one great luminary above them all, and it's Chris Paul. I got to win for my life tonight. I want a floor general. I want a guy
Whoa,
who can also,
okay.
by the way, make a shot if I have to. It's Chris Paul.
All right, nobody's risking any lives right now. Frank Isola, you heard it. Best point guard in the league?
Yeah, I'll take LeBron James in a do-or-die game. The one thing about Ja Rule, last night as he was scoring 18 points in the third quarter, Antonio Brown showed up, spent the whole time looking at his phone. Instead of watching one of the best players, forget point guards, he's one of the best players in the league.
You have a problem with Antonio Brown showing up and looking at his phone, but I got a problem with you
Yes.
watching Antonio Brown looking at his phone instead of watching
called
Ja
reporting.
Morant, who you
It's
just
reporting.
called Ja Rule. What would I do without my baby? Harry Lyles Jr., how about you?
Bob Ryan, come on, man. We got to give Steph Curry some more credit, man. He's a great passer. He's got great handles.
I think we know how Bob
and
feels about
he's
Steph
actually
Curry.
gotten a lot better defensively this year. Got to give Steph Curry that. I will say this, though, with the point guard conversation, it really kind of depends on what you want your team to look like. So with that said, I do think at the very worst, right, you should consider Ja Morant as one of the best in the NBA. But for me, it's got to be the guy that you got to guard 94 feet, and that's Steph Curry.
And Ramona Shelburne.
Well, I mean, look, everybody plays point guard now. LeBron's a point guard, but he's also a center.
Right, positionless
Doncic's a point
basketball
guard, but he's a
exists.
power forward. I mean, whatever you want to do. What Ja Morant has done, though, is we're talking about Ja Morant today, and we're not talking about the Brooklyn Nets losing 3 in a row at home. That's a step up from last week when the Lakers lost in Memphis, and he's like, hey, why are you talking about the Lakers losing and not us winning?
But now you're doing that. You just talked about the Brooklyn Nets. Instead of saying that he's an all-star, should be in the dunk
I'll go even
contest.
further. He needs to be in the dunk contest
there
and
it
not need
is.
a bribe of $1 million.
Bob, if you're not calling Steph Curry a point guard, then does Golden State not have a point guard, or are you calling Draymond Green a point guard?
No, they really don't. You know what they got? They have a surrogate point guard called Draymond Green. And because of him, you don't need one. And Curry can pass, yeah, but it's not his raison d'etre. His raison d'etre is shooting.
not the
Everybody
raison
should
d'etre,
understand that.
He has a certain
Extra
je ne sais
points for
quoi
Raison
to him.
d'etre right
That's
there.
all I would say. We'll move on. Becky Hammond is by herself, too. Here she is introducing herself as Las Vegas Aces head coach.
I sat in a lot of head coaching interviews, and I don't think there's two things that people always said. You've only been in San Antonio and you've never been a head coach. Well, I can tell you right now, Mark Davis met me, Nikki met me, and said that's a head coach right now.
Harry, how do you hear Hammond there, and how do you consider her move from the NBA, where she was the first female assistant coach on a bench, to now the WNBA, where she gets her first head coaching job?
I think that she hears those interviews loud and clear, right? They said that she needs head coaching experience, so she's going to a place where she's going to get that. Now, I think she's also aware in that video that, hey, women and people of color in breaking barriers have to do more than the people that come before them. She's going to do that as well. But let's also not take away what this means for the WNBA. She's a big name back in their game. She's going to coach a team that's got plenty of star power on it. This is great for a league that has grown exponentially over the past handful of years.
Ramona Shelburne.
Yeah, she's going to a Las Vegas team that should have been in the finals last year. He got upset by Phoenix. They have the reigning MVP in Asia Wilson, Chelsea Gray, an Olympian, Kelsey Plum. That's a team that needs someone to help them get over the hump. If she can do that, I think that validates her as a head coach right away. And she's not the only head coach who has had to pay her dues as an assistant and a head coach in other places. There's a few other male head coaches who've done that. Jason Kidd, Steve Nash, gone straight from being a player to being a head coach. But the norm is you're an assistant coach for a couple of different places. So I don't think we can say just because Becky was the first female assistant coach in the NBA, she has to be the first female head coach in the NBA. She's opened the door for 10 or 12 other ladies to have that opportunity, and I think there's a few who legitimately have a chance because of
So
her.
yesterday when we had this discussion, and Sarah Spain did it on her FaceTime,
Yep.
she said that she's happy for her to get this opportunity because it shows the WNBA is at the level, but also there's
Yep.
something about her that she feels is just like, oh, it should have been the NBA. You don't share that feeling?
I don't, and she got opportunities, and a lot of what we talk about is we want her to have the opportunity to have interviews. I want more than Becky Hammond to have an opportunity to have interviews. I want like Lindsay Gottlieb, who's now the head coach at USC. She should have opportunities to have head coaching. Lindsay Harding, who's an assistant coach in Sacramento. All these Jenny Buchek, who's with Rick Carlin in Indiana. Those are all the women that she opened the door for.
Understood.
Who now should be getting those opportunities to interview for head coaching jobs in the NBA.
And Jonquel Jones, who's MVP of the WNBA.
Yeah.
That's the reigning MVP. Asia
Reese
Wilson's
Witherspoon.
a year back. Bob Ryan.
In just 15 seconds, this woman made a case for herself, and now she's going to show us that, yes, she can do the job. And I don't doubt that she can do the job. And I think that there's others out there, and I got my money on one down the road. I'll be very surprised if someday Dawn Staley isn't that woman.
And Bob knows that a lot of people up in Boston feel the same way about Carol Lawson, who was with the Celtics, is now
Yep.
at Duke. Also remember this, Ime Udoka, Monty Williams, they were both with the Spurs, went somewhere else before they got their
Yep.
head coaching opportunity. Then Ettore Messina, a lot of people thought he would be the first international coach to coach in the NBA. He didn't get an opportunity. He went back to Europe, and he was with the Spurs.
Harry Lyles Jr., Frank Isola. Front row seats for Shelburne and Ryan in Showdown. Frank will be looking at his phone, looking at Antonio Brown, looking at Shelburne and Ryan in Showdown. Next, Ramona Shelburne, Bob Ryan, welcome to Showdown.
I think the bias has something to do, if there is any, with the 11 national championships, which is a lot more than 2. Last I checked. At least I remember that on Sesame Street.
Oh, Gino Auriemma, he waited a couple of weeks to respond to Muffin McGraw's comments of the Looking Glass podcast to our friends Kate Fagan and Jessica Samatana that ESPN and college basketball in general has a bias towards UConn. So his response was 11-2, Muffin. Ramona, who you got?
I'm going with Muffin on because I think Gino's response is just another example of him not liking to be criticized by powerful women in this sport. He didn't have a good relationship with Pat Summitt, didn't have a good relationship with Muffin McGraw, Tara Vanderveer, I can name them, but he should have just stopped right there. 11-2, that's all you got to say.
Bob Ryan?
A pox on both their houses. In Muffin's case, it was sour grapes, this ridiculous charge. And in Gino's case, it's a case of, oh my God, I'm not in the top 10. I don't know how to handle it.
Wait, you think it's ridiculous to even suggest that there's a bias towards UConn?
Yes. They
course it's a
what
bias.
bias? They
Maya
won.
Moore, Diane
It's a team.
Taurasi.
That's the team I wanted to see. I'm sorry.
Understandably, but there are many, many incredible stories you can go to every week, and it seems like UConn is 1, 2, 3, and 4. when you look, there's more than that.
Oh,
all right.
boo-hoo.
We're going to split the
Oh,
point.
boo-hoo.
We're going to move on. Buy or sell, Showdown 2 here, the week that was for Washington football. Their stadium fell apart, all right, and nearly knocked over Jalen Hurts. Those fans, they were okay, but I'm not sure. They said the team didn't even reach out to them, but that's a different story. This is how they got away from that story. Today, they announced February 2nd, they're going to give their new team name finally after years, and there was a blur in the background. And some people think a link from the Washington Admirals took them to the site. So they may have scooped themselves here, Bob Ryan, from this franchise. Is this misdirection or a bungle?
This is so Snyder era Washington nonsense. It could have been done in a month, maybe even a week. And by the way, I have the name. The obvious name, the Washington Monuments.
Yes, okay. But now people think it's the Admirals today, Ramona Shelburne. What do you say?
I'm so used to calling them Woofed. Like, I don't even need a new name. This whole process has just been more than like WTF.
Yes, I want to say Dan Lust, a sports lawyer, came up with the bungle or misdirection question. Point and game goes to Ramona Shelburne.